It's been quite the number of months, but we finally got a useful update to the case of Ahmaud Arbery. I know there's been a lot of rumbling about the charging of Ahmaud's former prosecutor, however, we won't be covering that for today. I made 2 videos covering Actual Justice Warrior's coverage on the Ahmaud incident, and since his last video of the subject covered the defense's attempt to introduce evidence about Ahmaud's private conduct, it seems only fair to cover an update relating to said information. This new piece of information relates to the judge's recent order on whether to allow incidents in Ahmaud's past to be used as evidence. In short, it did not go well for the defense. Before we get to the order, we should cover some information that pertains to the issue. While we have covered the notice to introduce evidence and the prosecution's response, on May 13th, the judge had ordered the defense in 20 days to explain the relevance of the information, with the prosecution getting a similar 20 days to respond. We're going to look at these first, mainly because the order itself is going to be in response to the statements made by the defense and the prosecution. For relevance, the defense brings up 4 issues that they believe make Ahmaud's prior conduct relevant. Why was Ahmaud Arbery in Satilla Shores, specifically in 220 Satilla Drive? Why did Ahmaud Arbery run after having been spotted inside 220 Satilla Drive? Why did Ahmaud Arbery continue to run when the McMichaels caught up to him to tell him to stop running and talk to them? Why did Ahmaud Arbery turn towards Travis McMichael to attack him instead of continuing to run away from him? So what is relevant evidence? We can look at Georgia Statute 24-4-401 to understand. Relevant evidence means evidence having any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is consequence to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. The defense argues that Ahmaud's prior evidence is relevant because it would show a fact of consequence to the determination of the action of whether the McMichaels' chasing was done unlawfully. This will be done by proving that they had acted in accordance to Georgia Citizens Arrest Statute, that they had reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. So in short, they're going to be bringing up Ahmaud's past to prove that they themselves had probable and reasonable grounds of suspicion, and therefore their citizen's arrest was lawful. The defense breaks down their defense into 3 parts. The McMichaels' belief about Ahmaud Arbery's intent and motive behind entering the vacant house, the McMichaels' intent and motive behind chasing Ahmaud Arbery, and Travis McMichael's use of deadly force after Ahmaud Arbery turned toward him at the front of Travis McMichael's truck. Under McMichael's belief about Ahmaud's intent, they use evidence from incidents where Ahmaud had shoplifted and trespassed before to prove that McMichaels had probable grounds of suspicion. Under McMichael's intent behind chasing Ahmaud, they again use Ahmaud's past in a bid to show that McMichaels had probable and reasonable grounds of suspicion. They bring up incidents of trespassing, shoplifting, and bringing a gun to school. This is to show that McMichaels had probable and reasonable grounds of suspicion that Ahmaud had been fleeing from a crime. And for the last one, Travis McMichael's use of force. They justify Travis' use of force because, as they argue, they had reason and probable grounds of suspicion that Ahmaud was going to use deadly force with the intent to kill based on the fact that he has said mean words to the police in the past, that he had brought a gun to the school in the past, and that he had committed the crime of trespassing in the past. Now to me, to the prosecution, and to the judge, this was complete nonsense. Firstly, the McMichaels had no knowledge of Ahmaud's prior contact. They didn't even know that he had been in that house that day. You can't establish that you had probable cause based on information you learned after the incident. It's clear even to the judge that this is a nonsensical explanation for evidence. As they write, the questions presented create a straw man that endeavors to make character evidence relevant. Indeed, evidence on why Arbery did anything on February 23rd, as opposed to what he did, does not make anything more or less probable that the defendants committed the acts charged. Although permissible uses are offered, it is apparent that defendants' intended use of the victim's other acts is to engage in speculation as to why Arbery acted as he did. To be clear, the defendants contend that other acts of the victim unknown to them have a tendency to make their suspicions about the victim more correct in hindsight. The court finds that this retroactive rationale does not make the other acts relevant. To be clear, the defense's entire brief in support of their notice is bone dry in arguments. The prosecution even makes note of this. As they write, the defendants listed numerous proper purposes for the omission of this evidence in their original brief. They appear to have abandoned them, offering no argument, citation, or legal support for these contentions, and now do not list any proper purpose for the proffered other act evidence, nor any citation or legal support for their contentions, except to repeatedly use the words Arbery's intent and motive. Continuing on with the judge's statements on the notice, there are 3 additional issues as to why the evidence is not considered admissible. Need for evidence, overall similarity between acts, and probative value. Under need of evidence, the judge himself believes this is being used to show character propensity, which isn't allowed under Georgia law. As the judge writes, for example, the other acts could be used to contend that Arbery had prior run-ins with the law enforcement and was bad of character. Arbery must have been running to evade capture as demonstrated by his prior involvement with the police. And Arbery must have threatened Travis McMichael with unlawful force since Arbery used swear words and aggressive language with police officers in the past. This is clearly bad character and propensity evidence, and it was unknown to the defendants on February 23, 2020. Under similarity, it is to note that events can't have significant differences between them. However, this note seems pointless because, as the judge notes, the defendants did not provide the court with specifics on how the other acts of evidence and the specific actions of Arbery on February 23rd are similar. Finally, for probative value, the judge finds that it's unfairly prejudicial, will cause confusion of issues, will mislead the jury, and is a waste of time. Now, from just reading the defense's brief, I thought it was pretty clear the notice was dead in the water. Their brief lacked any semblance of substance, and it was clear that their goal was to establish that McMichaels somehow had reasonable or probable grounds of suspicion through the actions they weren't aware themselves. It's a garbage argument. The people who were happy about the first notice to introduce evidence also seem to be the same people who actually don't care to read the case in front of them. This notice to introduce evidence was more along the lines of scoring points rather than actually evaluating whether the information's going to go through. Anyways, like always, all my sources can and will be found down below.